Ta-da! Welcome. Weedy Weekend 97.3 away from 100. Looking forward to show number 100. I'm going to have to figure out something to do for it. So if you guys could let me know ideas down below, that would be great. That would be great. This one, number 97, is a small one. I only have 5 stories to share. I usually have a lot more than that, but my sources have been busy this week with Cannabis Cup in Vernon. Looking forward to getting the reports on how that went. I'll bring that next week or later this week to you. So what's Weedy Weekend 97 about this time? This time, well, like every time, it's about cannabis medicine, mostly in Canada, but around the world. What can we do? What is being done and what's being done to us? I shared a story last week. The first story we're on to this week. By the way, this is a weedless one. My usual disclaimer, my 8-year-old son is 4 or 5 rooms away, not listening. He's busy playing with stuff, so he doesn't hear any of this, and I won't be doing any medicine during it. I, of course, pre-gamed a little bit outside to get my body working. What a hard day this morning was. The whole day was this morning, just getting out of bed. But that's another video, another time. Now, let's share the story with you. Last week, I shared a story about some research that went on with young mice, a couple months old to 6 months old, and then old mice, 18 months old to 2 years old, being put through a whole bunch of different kinds of tests to look at memory and brain capacity and stuff like that with THC. This was nothing to do with CBD, and I do think the study should be duplicated for CBD because CBD does some incredible things with the brain, but so does THC. That's why this story is exploding into so many different stories, because the focus has been on CBD, and people have to realize there's two sides. There's over 100 sides to this plant. There are many chemicals within it, and all of them have a job within our bodies, a duty to perform to keep our homeostasis level. That's this plant's job. The more this comes forward, the more I see that. But this time I took 2 more stories reporting on the same studies. And the reason I kept both stories is because one, I feel, the one from Scientific American, Scientific American and or Nature America, tends to really lend itself to stigma and uses current stigma that's dying to make their points. I think it's really poor journalism from somebody using science in their name. The other story comes from the tai.ca, which is mostly an opinion, the Tai News Culture Solutions, but they present a much more focused, let's get into it and let's discuss, and you'll see why I like one more than the other. And this first paragraph kind of tells why I don't like Scientific American, because they're trying to use juxtaposition to make their point, yet one position is not an accurate position to make the point of the other. If you do that, you lend yourself to not being trusted. Quoting, picture the stereotypical pot smoker, young, dazed, and confused. Marijuana has long been known for its psychoactive effects, which can include cognitive impairment. But new research published this week in Nature Medicine suggests the drug might affect older users very differently than young ones, at least in mice. Instead of impairing learning and memory as it does in young people, really? There's no study to represent that statement. That is not fact. Sorry for the editorial within the editorial. Instead of impairing learning and memory as it does in young people, wrong. The drug appears to reverse age-related declines in the cognitive performance of elderly mice. Now, I want to say this. All in all, what the study found was that the youth that they were giving pot to, THC, were finding themselves all over the place and forgetting things and stuff like that. They attest that to just being high and not being able to work your brain. But in the elderly mice, they perform better, and even up to and including those mice that were not impaired but were young. So they're trying to extrapolate from that, and I don't mind. Science is a bit of extrapolation, but then you got to prove that extrapolation. If your test has suggested something, then you got to go on for more tests and try to prove and or deny that. Never go in saying, I'm going to prove this. I need to find out what the reality is. But for them to say has long been known for psychoactive effects which can impair, and that we all know that young people, that's what it does to them. No, this Scientific American has spent their time and I'll include the story below. Read it. Some of it is really good because they do dig in to the actual science. But to use all this obfuscation to steer us around stigma that's already been proved wrong to make their story is poor journalism. Nobody ever said scientists were good journalists. This is proof. If it was written by a scientist, I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to move from that story because I don't like that story. They keep going back to the original premise that they have not proved with any link that young people perform poorly or poorer when high and when not. I have shared that in Weedy Weekend long time ago that there was only one study that suggested it, and it was defunct because it was more when they really looked at all the adjoining situations in these kids' lives that had been studied, that the more underlying factor of environment tended to lend itself to the decrease in IQ than the pot. The pot was just something to help them get through what was already a difficult life, which really can often be a thing for teenagers. We as adults have such a hard time, and we lend ourselves to all these different drugs that help us cope. And yet we tell children to just cope. So we need to learn a lot more, and shame on Scientific American for going into the angle they did on this. Same story now. We're going to the TAI, News Culture Solutions, could pot end dementia. That's the angle they took, and if it does, our world will look very different. They took the angle, let's not look at the old bullshit about pot. Let's just look at the scientific findings here in this study and what it may or may not mean to our future as a society. Extrapolate that. And then let's go on to see if we can prove that. Because, let me go on to the story. On May 8th, the science journal Nature Medicine published an article with a surprising finding. Regular low doses of THC in mature and old mice, 12 to 18 months old, restored their cognitive skills to that of a 2-month-old mouse. THC, of course, is the active component of marijuana, so this study seemed counterintuitive. Scientists are pretty confident that THC messes up the human adolescent brain. Why would it rejuvenate the aging brain? That's a better way to put that question. What this goes on to say is, let's look at what dementia and Alzheimer's and those aging of the brain diseases that pull down our parents, our grandparents, into a state that we need to help them. Imagine if this is true. If we can extrapolate this from mice to humans, which I strongly suggest will be the case, and we can treat and or even cure dementia and bring elderly brains back. This story goes on to say, not only look at the savings in money alone. First of all, it would save us a fortune. Alzheimer's Society of Canada, according to them, 25,000 new cases of dementia are diagnosed in Canada every year. 16,000 Canadians under 65 are living with it. Currently, in total, the current number is 564,000. By 2031, 1 million people will have dementia if we don't do something about it. Our elderly people have the key to what's right in the world. As I'm learning these keys, I'm getting older and I'm getting to understand how to live better, how to be relaxed in a world that's anything but. As I'm learning that, my brain is deteriorating and I'm unable or less able to share it. And I'm also, because of the way our society is, the older we are, the more restricted we get in our movement, the less people we see, the less we can share this knowledge that we're having. If we can turn around this aging process and keep our minds clear and keep our bodies clear and out there in the public, teaching the young and the young helping us, it becomes a more synergistic society. It becomes better. But not just the cost. I mean, the society estimates that we're spending $15 billion yearly to care for persons with dementia. By 2040, that will rise to $153 billion spent yearly just to look after these people who maybe, just because of this medicine, might be able to look after themselves. And I have one more to join in here, a statement here. So a cure for dementia would free not only tax dollars, but caregivers, who are mostly women. This prospect alone should support a flood of new research money from government and pharmaceutical companies alike. Even if THC turns out to only be partially effective, it will still lighten a terrible burden. And if it doesn't work at all with humans, researchers will keep looking for something that does. But we've got an indication that this is a likely case. So we need to pour the money in there, pour the research in there, and it'll free up money down the road. It's a win-win. This is important. Our stigma, the reliance on stigma, the crap around stigma has to go away. I'm just giving a case that I know of. Somebody that I know whose dog was really, really sick. 15 years old, probably on the dog's last legs. This person did not believe much in the healing properties of THC or CBD, and so when it was suggested to this person to try CBD, they at first said no. Then they studied and started looking into some of the testimonials of people who have tried this for their ailing dogs, and finally decided, let's give it a try. And within a day and a half, the dog who was lying there and not moving started walking around the house, started eating supper, drinking water. It's been 4 days now and it's doing wonderful. So it is a medicine. It is a wonder drug, but we just don't know how much yet, because the money is being spent by taxpayers. The money of the taxpayers is being spent by our politicians fighting the legalization impairing our public by controlling them around regulations rather than sinking that taxpayer money into research, into finding the truth about all this stuff. I support tax dollars being used for that, not for arresting people. So those first two stories, one thing led 15 minutes. Not bad. The next story, peace and cheers, friends, love and harmony. The next story is, I won't go on and on because this is getting old, is about cannabinoid cycling. I've brought other stories to you guys before about tolerance breaks, what tolerance means, how your body builds it up. We've talked about that. And sometimes people like me who are in incredible pain cannot do a tolerance break. I have suggested cycling through different strains, cycling through different types has been the answer for me. This from herb.co. Herb.co. This is a fantastic, very in-depth article that I've read 2 or 3 times already. I've really enjoyed it. It doesn't just go in to talk about what cannabinoid cycling is and how it could do you better, but it goes in depth into first it explains tolerance. You develop tolerance. When your body receives more THC than is necessary, the cell receptors that it binds to change. Specifically, the expression of these receptors becomes less dense, and some of the receptors' connectivity is lost altogether. It is the body, and it goes on to say this not only isn't permanent, but it also isn't the whole body. Some receptors shut down that plant is attaching to, because you have enough. You have enough in your body to handle that situation. It's indicating you need to move on to a different strain, a different strength, a different method to touch other receptors. It then goes on to say, what do I do when I become tolerant? There are tolerance breaks, but you have problems with withdrawal during that time. You can't affect your pain. And you get your own symptoms when you weed yourself off the weed. So cannabinoid cycling is simply switch dominant cannabinoids. Find out what's dominant in your current strain. Get a strain that does what you want the strain to do, but is dominant in other areas. It takes a lot of knowledge. It takes a lot of research. I use Leafly. I use Allbud. I use herb.co. I use Google. Just research, learn, and find what affects you, because until our governments get off of this Schedule 1, Schedule 2 crap and start researching, we're going to have to be the guinea pigs, as we have been for a long time. Okay, next story. Cannabinoid cycling. Believe me, I recommend all of you read this. Read it in depth. Read through. It's a long story. It's a well-written story. It's a good story that takes you many different tangents and lots of hot links to other studies to support what they say. That's good journalism. Next story here is from Natural Health Services, the clinic I go to, currently anyway. Cannabis and Cancer. What do we know? I highlighted this one paragraph, and I'm going to read it to you and leave the article to you all. Through its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, it helps put our bodies back in homeostasis. In terms of cannabis' scientifically proven ability to help, we know that it's an important part of counteracting the side effects from conventional cancer treatments, such as nausea, vomiting, anorexia, fatigue, pain, and depression, that seriously compromise the patient's quality of life. Many double-blind studies with cannabis have been done around mitigating the side effects of chemo. Typically, when tested against placebo and the leading pharmaceutical antiemetics, anti-nausea and anti-vomiting, cannabis was the preferred treatment up to 80% of the time. The test subjects preferred THC microdosing of 10 milligrams every 3 to 4 hours, 3 to 5 sessions a day, with the inhalation route more reliable than the oral route in achieving therapeutic blood concentrations. It's very important to understand that we are learning more, and there is enough study out there to say that this stuff needs studied a lot more. This is a great article, another great article for you to read and me to share. We're going on to the last one, and it's just a medical infographic. If you got a good printer, print this off, share it with a few people. Really, really good. It goes on to say 10 benefits of cannabis, treats migraines, and it tells the study, slows tumor growth, relieves symptoms of chronic diseases, prevents Alzheimer's, treats glaucoma, prevents seizures, helps those with ADD and ADHD, may treat multiple sclerosis, helps relieve PMS, helps calm those with Tourette's and OCD, and so much more. That's the end of Weedy Weekend. That's the positive note that I want to end on, is this is a miracle drug. This is helping animals and people all over this country and many countries. And in a decade, we're going to look back at those who poo-pooed this medicine as to being very narrow-minded, not open. So don't be that person. And don't let your friends be that person. Let's share the knowledge and let's get everybody on board so they're all standing up to the rights of people to have a good quality medicine, not these pharmaceuticals that hurt us, that I'm still paying for 10 years of pharmaceuticals in my body. I'm still paying now, and I've been off of them for well over a year. Peace and cheers, friends. Love and harmony. Happy Victoria Day in Canada. The only reason I like this day is we get another day off. Peace and cheers. Love and harmony.